joke characters, or the comedic relief. We love them, we tolerate them, but let's be honest, we are more than likely annoyed by them. In any bit of media, the comedic relief is one of the hardest character archetypes to pull off. Next to the lone wolf character that is really awesome and everybody loves, but also seems to miss the entire point of. What's this picture of Rorschach doing here? Anyway, bringing it back to the comedic relief, one of the reasons why they are very hard to pull off is, well, their primary existence. Firstly, they need to be funny. If they're not funny, then they're not going to be a good comedic relief. Kind of self-explanatory, I know, but it needs to be said. The second one is timing, and yes, trust me, this will relate back to D&D, just stick with me for a little bit. A well-written comedic relief is one that provides their jokes in the right moments. Take, for instance, Merry, Pippin, and Gimli from The Lord of the Rings, specifically the Jackson movies, because outside specific moments, these characters have very little in common with their book counterparts, though that can also be said about a lot of the members of the Fellowship. Anyway, these characters, despite what they did to my boy Gimli, are well-done comedic relief characters. Because their jokes and comedic situation come in at moments that, well, help relieve the tension without breaking the flow of the narrative. Their timing makes sense, but more importantly, and this is the third point, they have more emotions. They are not jokey all the time. In fact, Pippin causing a comedic moment in Balin's tomb, well, leads to a pretty serious situation and ultimately the death of a character, to which we see him mourn the death that he basically directly caused. And the same can be said about any of these three. Gimli has his awesome moments. Both Merry and Pippin show their intense loyalty and the fact that they have a lot of honor. They are more than just the comedic relief. Which brings us back to D&D. The reason a lot of joke characters don't work at the table is because they are just the comedic relief, and that's it. There's very little depth to them other than the existence for the gag and the fact that, well, their jokes come in at the worst possible moments. They are basically the Pippin bucket scene done 1,000 times in a single session. We like to think that every joke character winds up being Slappy from that infamous comic, which is absolutely hilarious by the way. However, most just wind up being annoying because, again, they are the joke that the player thought up first and foremost and little anything beyond that. And sometimes as a result, may feel like they are stealing the spotlight constantly. Now there are ways to actually make a joke character work at the table. First and foremost is just pitching the character to the table. See if everyone is on board for it. For instance, some tables may want to take their Curse of Strahd game a little bit more seriously, and having a joke character can potentially just ruin that vibe. So if the table isn't on board for it, don't go through with it. This is why we have session 0, folks. Then, and this is a big one, think about why your character goes to jokes first and foremost, beyond any other type of reaction. Why is that the avenue they go down? Maybe something in their past caused them to want to joke about serious situations or not take things seriously. Maybe they want to avoid that kind of stuff for whatever reason. This can be a very interesting avenue to explore with your character down the road for both yourself and also the Dungeon Master. I think a great example of this is actually both Scanlan and Jester from Critical Role. Scanlan started out as a very jokey character, but again, Sam knew when to bring in the jokes and when to play along with the rest of the table and be serious. Eventually become a pretty deep character as the campaign went on. So much so that when Legend of Vox Machina came out, he feels like his end of campaign counterpart more so than when everything first started, due to, well, wrapping up the campaign and 10 years of hindsight. And the same thing can be said about Jester. She knew when to bring in the jokes and when to be serious. Though again, these are trained actors, so it's not necessarily the most fair comparison because they are trained on how to share scenes with others. Though that element was certainly pushed in Campaign 3. So if you want to make a joke character, you absolutely can. Just keep in mind, you are not the only one at the table. You are but one player of many, and your fun is really not the only fun that matters. It's everyone's fun. So if you pitch a joke character, not everyone is on board, potentially try to find a middle ground of sorts, or a character that you can enjoy just as well that will fit the vibe and overall table, which also in general is just a good rule of thumb for player etiquette at any table. Then on top of that, think more deeply about your character. Ask why they are this way, which could potentially lead to an avenue of exploring the character more deeply than you may have anticipated, which could lead to memorable character moments. And that'll do it for this video, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your favorite comedic relief character down below, and I'll catch you all next time.